Oh no! I think the door's about to slam. Oh, someone's...
Really?
Oh, great. Okay, yeah, come. Okay.
Oh, I just forgot what I was going to say. Never mind, sorry.
I was just waiting for the door to slam.
You didn't start it yet?
No, I am. I was waiting for the door to slam.
Oh, okay, so I'll slam and then come knock on a few.
Alright. That wasn't a slam. Oh, here it comes. Wait, here it comes. Wait, what's she doing? I'm waiting for it to slam. It's like every night when I'm going to sleep, and you hear, right when I want to go to sleep, so somebody's parking their car. And then you gotta wait. You gotta wait until they, stop parking because the engines are very loud. Then you gotta wait until they stop and turn off the car. Then you gotta wait for all the doors to slam. And then, slam the door already. Oh, what are they waiting for? There's a lot of action going on at the door. Oh, there it was. That wasn't really a slam. Alright. Fine. Here we go. Alrighty. What are we doing over here? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Tzadi Zayin, Daf 97 of Masechet Ksubis, friends. Well, Daf 97 talks about like the Ksuba and stuff like that. Alright, people are talking right next to the door. I can't focus. Alright, here we go. Alright, we're going to start on the Daf Tzadi Zayin with Alf all the way at the top. Ketzad Mocheres. Oh, okay, Gevaldik. So, what does it mean that like an almana, she could sell her she could sell fields in order to pay for her mazonas, for her food. Excuse me, 1 second. Omer Reb Daniel bar Rav Katina, Omer Rav Huna. So this is Rav Daniel bar Katina, the name of Rav Huna. Mocheres achas l'shneim oser chodesh. So every year, oh wait, okay, someone's coming. Alright. Yeah, no, come in already, no? So what are these people doing to me? They know that I'm preaching over here. I have no clue. So achas l'shneim oser chodesh. So says Rav Katina, the name of Rav Huna, that she sells once a year. Rav Daniel bar Rav Katina, Amar Rav Huna, she sells once a year, meaning, she's got to pay for her grocery bill. So once a year she sells land to make enough money to be able to pay for her groceries. And then the buyer pays her in installments, right? So let's say the field costs $12,000. So she sells the field once, she sells, property once, $12,000 worth of property, once a year. And then the buyer pays her in monthly installments so that if she ends up getting married, right? If she ends up getting married, so then she doesn't get mazonis anymore. So if, she would get all of the money, at once for the entire year, so that, meaning if she would get $12,000, but after a month she gets married, so then, she's got to give the money back, whatever. So, and he loses the field and all that stuff. So why should he pay for the whole field? So what he does is he pays the monthly installments. And that way, if she ends up getting married, so then, I'll just stop the installments and then he'll have to, give back the field and get the money back from the Yisomim, stuff like that. Fine. Oh, slam the door. Now that was a slam. That's what I was waiting for before. Rav Huna Amar says, Rav Huna mocheres l'shisha chodashim v'lokeach mipanes achas l'shoshim yom. Whereas Rav Yehuda says that she sells property every 6 months, and then the buyer pays in monthly installments. Tanya Kavasi de Rav Huna, so you have a brisa like Rav Huna. Mocheres l'shneim oser chodesh v'lokeach mefanes achas l'shoshim yom. So you have a brisa supporting Rav Huna, which is that she sells property once a year, and the buyer pays in monthly installments. Tanya Kavasi de Rav Yehuda, we also have a brisa supporting Rav Yehuda that mocheres l'shisha chodashim, that she sells property every 6 months. V'lokeach mefanes achas l'shoshim yom, and again the purchaser pays in monthly installments. Says Amir that the halacha is mocheres l'shisha chodashim v'lokeach mefanes achas l'shloshim yom. Says Amir that the halacha is like Rav Yehuda, that she sells property every 6 months, and the buyer pays in monthly installments. So Rav Ashi says to Amemar, what about Rav Huna's opinion? That it's yearly. I mean, what about Rav Huna's opinion? Rav Huna is a humongous deal. So Amalei, lo shmirli klam lo svirli. So it says Amemar, look, I never heard of it, meaning I don't hold like Rav Huna. Interesting. Okay, holds like Rav Yehuda instead. But minim Rav Sheshes, the taka asakasha fin Rav Sheshes mocheres lemizonis. Okay, so if you have a widow and she sells property for mizonis to pay for her groceries, okay, ma'u shetachzor v'titrov lichsube. Wow, friends, do you hear the shaila? Friends, do you hear the shaila? You hear the shaila? If you have a widow and she sells property in order to pay for her groceries, and now she's getting remarried and she wants to collect her ksubis. Problem is, she sold all the property already. Can she go to the fellow who purchased the property and take it back from him? Because after all, the property is meshubah to her ksubis, and now she needs to collect her ksubis. So after having sold it to the fellow, can she now take it back from the fellow? Because she needs to be paid for her ksubis. Wow. That's a kasha. So again, so but minim Rav Sheshes, they ask a kasha from Rav Sheshes, mocheres mizonis. If a widow sells property to pay for her groceries, ma'u shetachzor v'titrov lichsuba. Can she chop back around the property in order to pay, so as payment for her ksuba that she hasn't yet collected? Rav Yosef, and the kasha centers around Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef, that says Rav Yosef, amaltu dezovin achrayis hayasme, that if a widow sells property, so who's responsible to guarantee the sale? Right? That if a widow sells property to some fellow, and then a creditor knocks on his door and says, "Hey, I had a loan with the fellow who passed away. So so now he loses his field. So who does he go back to get the get the insurance payment? So the orphans. Also, if Bezdin sold property, I guess for the widow. So oichet, the achrayis is on the orphans. So what do we say? Do we say that, well, since it's the orphans who are guaranteeing the sale, so meaning she sold property to pay for her groceries, now she's coming to collect the ksubah. She says, look, I haven't yet collected my ksubah, and therefore she takes back the property, and she says, look, go to the orphans and say that the field was taken away from you and they have to guarantee it. Odilma, Matzi Amrlo, or maybe the orphans could say to her, granted that by selling the field, you didn't accept upon yourself, you didn't guarantee, some external, fellow coming to collect the field. But you can't be the one who's coming to now collect the field. You have to, at least guarantee your own self isn't going to come and take it away. So Omer Lihu, so Rav Sheshes says to them, Tenisu, we have a price, I guess. Moches v'oleches ad k'dei ksupaso, that she could sell until the value of her ksuba, that she could sell the property, but she has to leave over the value of her ksuba so that she could later collect it. But if she sells all of it, right, she can't just sell all of it and not leave anything for her ksuba. Like, she knows she's going to have to collect that ultimately, so therefore she can only sell up to the value of the ksuba. And that is I think the Hartzell said like a surety for her. Okay, shetikbek ksubaso min ashar, so that she'll be able to later on collect the ksuba from what remains of the property. Shmamino shaira in lo shaira lo. we see that Davka, if she leaves over what to collect as her ksuba, so then she has a ksuba. If she doesn't leave anything over, since she doesn't leave anything over. V'dilma eitzatova kamash malon, d'likula hadrinoso, but maybe it's just good advice. Maybe when we're saying sell up to the value of your ksuba, it's just good advice, because since you're going to have to collect later, so yeah, don't put yourself in a situation, right? Dulolikula hadrinoso. So at the entis in the bungalow colony on Shabbos afternoon, shouldn't call her a hadrinoso. Shouldn't call her a somebody who goes back on agreements. So therefore, maybe it's just good advice to leave over the value of the ksuba so she doesn't have to renege later. Right? I think actually the article even said a reneger. So they shouldn't call her a reneger. Okay? So that they shouldn't have to call, right? So that she shouldn't have to renege. But maybe if she did sell all of it, then maybe she would nonetheless be able to still collect the ksuba, just that they would call her a reneger. Imkain, if that's the case, lisne gova ksuba also min ashar. Well, no, if that were the case, that she was able to collect, even if she sold everything, she would still be able to collect the value of the ksuba. Then it should say that she collects the ksuba from the remaining amount. My semechlo, what does it mean that it's a surety? So, shmamina, shaira in, lo shaira lo. It's objective. It's that if she leaves over enough to pay for, to receive her ksuba, so then she receives her ksuba. If she doesn't, then she doesn't. They want to know. They ask a kasha. Zovin flow, it's strichu lezuze. Okay, so this next piece of the Gemara, the flow is a little bit backwards, I think, ultimately. I wouldn't know if backwards is the right word. Maybe like topsy-turvy. Or maybe, as my grandfather would maybe say, topsy-turvy. Let's go weiter. Ibaylu de asked kasha. By the way, I told my mom that I would be much funnier on Babylon Talmud, but then I wouldn't be able to talk. Okay. Ibaylu de asked kasha. De asked kasha. Zavim v'lo itztrichule zuzei hadri zavine or lo hadri zavine. So if So if a fellow sells epis, but then it turns out that he doesn't need the money, right? He sold epis because he sold some real estate because he wanted cash to be able to invest in some other thing. For whatever reason, the investment fell through. So what? So what happens? So he buys Zovin. So if he sold epis, and then ultimately it turned out that after the fact, something changed and now he actually doesn't need the funds. So hadri zabini or lo hadri zabini? Can he, say, okay, I want to undo that. Look, I only sold the property with the assumption that I was going to need this money to invest in some other thing. That ended up falling through. I didn't need to sell that whatever I sold. So should he be able to, get his money back? Well, I guess return the money and get his thing back. Can he undo the sale? Tashma, come in here. Gavra duzovin ara lirapope. So come here, that there was a certain fellow, duzovin ara lirapope, that he sold property to Rav Papa. Okay, sold property to Rav Papa, and he was, planning, right? It's trichule zuze limizabin tori. Oh, he needed funds, he needed liquidity, he needed cash in order to pay for oxen. The soft loads trichule. In the end, something happened to the oxen, and in the end, he didn't need the money. And Rav Papa returned his property to him. So it sounds like from there that if a fellow sells epis and it turns out that the thing that he needed the money for ended up falling through, so you'd be able to revoid it. And so Rav Papa gave him back the property. Rav Papa lifnim mishur sadinu ta'avid, to which the Gemara says that's not necessarily a proof. It could be that Rav Papa was just going out of his way. He didn't need to return the property, but he was being a nice guy. Right, the fellow only sold the property in order to buy oxen that fell through. Rav Papa says, if you want, you can have your field back. Toshma, come here. Da'u batsorta de hava ben ardoya. there was a famine not a famine actually. Rashi says it means that there was a sudden spike in the prices in Ardoya. That they went to the Shuk Machne in Ardoya, and suddenly everything there had a sharp price hike because they thought that the shipments weren't going to be able to come through, and who knew what was going to happen, and the prices, took a hockey stick curve. Zavninu kule amala padnayu. So what did all the people do? They sold their mansions. Everybody sold everything so that they would have money, so that they could pay these really high prices. Lasof asuchite. In the end, everything turned out just okay. Everything turned out fine. The wheat arrived, and the prices went back to normal, and that was, and everything was okay. But the thing is, everybody had sold their houses. So now what do you do? So Rav Nachman said to the people, Dinahu tahatre apadni lemarayu. So Rav Nachman said that everybody can get their houses back. So Hazam Nami Zabine Betos Havu, to which the Gemara says, yeah, but that's a different case, right? Because in that case, they actually sold their houses out of toes, right? They sold it by mistake. The Gloi Milsa the Arava Ba'akule Hava Kaima. Because it turned out that the boat was on its way, but something happened on the seas and had to take a different route, so it was delayed. So, interestingly, there's a difference between that case and the case when, that fellow sold his property in order to buy cows. What's the difference? In the case of the seller who sells his property in order to get cash to then be able to buy cows, at the time that he sold the property, everything was looking fine. He was going to get cash. He was going to go to buy the cows. I don't know what the heck happened. The cows dropped dead after the fact. So in that case, at the time of the sale was a good sale. The sale was a good sale. And only later did that other thing happen. Right? And that's also what we're talking about, right? So that's what we're talking about also, right? Right? In a situation where you sell epis in order to get cash to invest in something else, and that investment later on ends up falling through, can you, does the sale get reversed? So that's when that is a situation when at the time of the sale, it was a good sale. Everything was looking fine. Things only turned sour later. Whereas in the situation in Ardoa just now with the wheat, at the time of the sale, they sold it because they thought that there was no wheat. But actually there was wheat. It was just, something happened on the sea, and things had to take a circuitous, I think, route. And that's why I came late. But if they would have known that at this very moment, don't worry, wheat is on its way, just hold out a few minutes, hold out a little bit, a few days, whatever it is, they wouldn't have done it. Right? And right, it's not like something happened later. At that very moment, actually, the wheat was on its way, they just didn't know that. So in that case, that's why they can get their property back. Right? So again, we don't have a answer yet to what would happen in a situation where something happened later on. Would you be able, right? But if at the time of the sale everything was looking fine, would you be able to go back on that? If that's the case, that in Ardoa at that very time, if they would have known that actually the wheat was on its way, they wouldn't have sold it, and therefore it was by accident they can get their houses back. Hanu da Amrle Rami Bar Shmuel, Rav Nachman, and this is what Rami Bar Shmuel says to Rav Nachman, Imkain, if that's the case, Nimtes Machshilon Lasud Lavo. But if that's the case, so then, this is gonna lead to mistakes in the future if people don't have security that when they buy something, they're actually buying it, and, if at any time it can kind of return, then that doesn't create a lot of security in buying stuff. So, Amrle, Otu Kol Yoma, Batzor Tashricha, to which, Rav Nachman, who is that? I think who said this? Where are we? Where even am I? Yes, I think that, I think that they said that to Rav Nachman, right. So Amarle, Atu Kuliyom Batzor Shricha, So if Nachman says, what is it? It's not like there are, is it like, are there sort of these price spikes every day? So Omerle, so Bar Shmuel says to Rav Nachman in Batzarta ben Nardo Mishkach Shchicha, that yes, in Nardo these price hikes are actually common. Okay, and therefore what Rav Bar Shmuel is saying is that because the price hikes are common, then we have to be concerned that maybe people are not going to have security in when they purchase things. And the Gemara says, well, regardless, the halacha is that if a fellow sells something and he doesn't need, and it turns out after the fact that he doesn't need the money, hadri zavine, he can, right, the sale does, in fact, go back. Okay. Says the Mishnah, Almone, Beimina Erisin, Beimina Nisuin. Very interesting stuff. A widow, whether she's a widow from engagement or whether she's a widow from marriage, Mocheres Shalo Bebezdin, she could sell property outside of Bezdin. She doesn't have to sell it through Bezdin. So, and what's the nafkamina? The nafkamina is that from Erison, she doesn't get mizonis. It's only the Ksubis. Whereas from Nisuin, if she's married, so then she gets mizonis as well. Now, mizonis is to pay for groceries, right? She can't wait to get like her day in court in order to sell stuff. She needs to eat today. And therefore, so I understand why if she's married and she needs to sell from mizonis, that she could sell outside of court. She could already sell, right? She doesn't need to wait for her day in court. But the interesting thing is that the Chachamim are saying that even when it comes to from Erison, where she can only collect the Ksubis, so, shouldn't we say just wait to go to court? Like what's the rush? So interestingly, the Chachamim say, and the Gemara is gonna, try to understand why, but Abone, Beimina Erison, Beimina Nisuin, Mocheres Shelo Bebezdin, Tanakama says that a widow, whether from engagement, whether from marriage, she can sell property outside of Bezdin. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon Min Anisuin, Mocheres Shelo Bebezdin, says Reb Shimon that, look, if she's a widow from marriage, where she's entitled to mizonis and she needs to eat today, so I understand why she could sell outside of Bezdin. But Mina Erison, but from engagement, where she's not entitled to mizonis, so why don't we say, so Reb Shimon says, we do say, wait for your day in court. Lo simkor lebebezdin. Mipnei she'ein la mizonis, because she doesn't get mizonis. V'chol she'ein la mizonis. Lo simkor lebebezdin. And if she doesn't have mizonis, so then, right, since she doesn't need to eat right now, she's only collecting her ksube, which is, it's important, but do it through Bezdin, wait a little bit, it's not a rush. B'shlomo min anisuin, mishum mizones. Now the Gemara asks our kasha. I don't understand. According to the Chachamim, I understand why from Nisuin she could sell property outside of Bezdin, without Bezdin. Mishum mizone, because she needs to eat. Elimina Erison, but as I've been saying, that from engagement, why is she allowed to sell property without Bezdin? It's only for a Ksubis. It's not like she needs to eat right now. So Amar Ula, says Ula, Mishum Chino, because of Chino. Says Ula, because, as we've seen in the past, that we want women to get married. And therefore, we want to make things easy for her, right? If her husband dies and she's gonna have to now wait for her time in Bezdin in order to collect the Ksubah, it's inconvenient and she might not want to get married. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan lefi she'ein adam motza shetisbaza ishto bebezdin. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan says, it's because a fellow doesn't want, a fellow doesn't want that his wife is gonna have to go to Bezdin in order to claim her Ksubah. Make things easy for her, right, and just let her collect the Ksubah quietly. So that's why that applies to an engaged woman as well. My benai, what's the nafkamina between Ula and Rabbi Yochanan? Ike benai grusha. The nafkamina is if she is divorced. The manda omer mishum chino, grusha nami boyachino. So according to the Manda Amr, who says that we're concerned that, we want to make things easy for women so that they'll, want to get married. So then that applies to whether, it's a hamana, a grusha, we want things to be easy. Lamanda Omar, lefi she'ein adam rotza shetisbaze ishto bebezdin. But according to the opinion who says that the reason is because a fellow doesn't want that his wife is going to have to go to Bezdin to claim the ksube, grusha lo ichpasle. Well, if they're divorced, he doesn't really care if she has to, this lo na'im thing, he doesn't really care if she has to go to Bezdin to collect the ksube. If he died and now his widow is going to have to go to Bezdin, that's not nice. But, if he's divorced, so then he doesn't, this concept of he doesn't want that his wife should have to go to Bezdin, it's less of a thing when they're divorced. Fine. Tanan. We learn in a Mishnah, in our next Mishnah that we're going to learn, depending on where we get to today, we'll learn it either today or tomorrow. Tanan. Ugrushal simkor. Okay. Seder. Tanan. Ugrushal simkor ela bebezdin. So the next Mishnah says that a divorcee, if she's going to sell her ksuba, she must sell her ksuba in Bezdin. So bishlome lemanda amar lefishein adam motza shetisbaze ishto bebezdin grusha leichpasle. So according to the opinion that the reason for a woman not to have to go to Bezdin is because the husband doesn't want that she should have to, be mitbazeh in Bezdin, to have to be degraded by going to Bezdin, meaning it's not nice that she should have to go to Bezdin. So I understand why in the case of divorce, we say in the next Mishnah that in the case of divorce, she has to go to Bezdin, because it's not his wife, right? He doesn't want his wife to have to go to Bezdin. Here it's not his wife, they're divorced. He doesn't care. But according to the Manda Amr, who says that it's about chen, that we're going to want people to get married, that we're going to want the women to get married, well, that applies to whether she ends up getting divorced or widowed. So Amani Rib Shimoni. Well, if you say that it's about chen, so then why would the divorcee have to go to Bezdin? It's because that Mishnah is Rib Shimon. That Mishnah is Rib Shimon, right? Rib Shimon had said that an almoneh who doesn't get mizonis has to go to Bezdin. So a grusha also, who doesn't get mizonis, also has to go to Bezdin. Rib Shimon, hatanale reisha mina erisin lo sim korchule. But one second, I don't understand. If it's Rib Shimon, we already know that a widow does not need to go to. We already know that a widow does need to go to Bezdin according to Rib Shimon because there's no mizonis. So then the same thing should apply to a grusha as well. that she should have to go to Bezdin. So answers the Gemara, Ma'udetema Amerev Tatok. Amona mina erisin hu de lo nafish chen dida. Ava grusha de nafish chen dida ema tibai chen. Okay, so the Gemara answers that, well, it's not necessarily obvious. I can't necessarily connect the dots. I can't necessarily say that because a almoneh needs to go to Bezdin, I can't necessarily extrapolate from there that a grusha would also have to go to Bezdin. How come? Because an almoneh, the almoneh, the chen is not as much, whereas by a grusha there is. What does that mean? Well, an almoneh hasn't actually been married yet, meaning, what's the whole point of chen? Chen is that we're going to want women to feel protected. We're going to want women to feel that, if anything happens and they have to collect the ksuba, they're not going to have to go to Bezdin. It's not going to be an unpleasant experience. And therefore, they want to feel like they're being, treated in a way that they feel comfortable with. So now, while they might feel okay about a woman who was only engaged, they were never married, they were never living together, they never had biyah together, they were engaged, they were going to get married, and then he passed away and she has to go to Bezdin. Okay, she wasn't so far in, she wasn't so invested, but maybe women would feel like once they were married and living together and then they get divorced, and now she's going to have to go to Bezdin, and she was so invested, and it just becomes a big mess. Women might not feel okay with that, and therefore they might not want to get married, and therefore maybe they wouldn't have to go to Bezdin to make it easier on them. So says Reb Shimon, no, even in that case, she would still have to go to Bezdin since there's no mizonos. Honami Tanina, but that's also tied in our Mishnah. What did it say in our Mishnah? Kol she'ein la mizonos, that anybody who doesn't get mizonos needs to go to Bezdin. Who's this anybody, right? The Mishnah had said that in Almone mina erisin needs to go to Bezdin since she doesn't get mizonos, and then it says that and anybody who doesn't get mizonos needs to go to Bezdin. So who's this anybody coming to include above and beyond in Almone? Lasuye mai, what's it coming to include? Lav lasuye grusha, is it not coming to include a grusha? Is it not coming to include a divorcee? So why do I need the next Mishnah to teach me that? Lo, it's not. Lasuye migoreshes, veina migoreshes. It's coming to include a situation where a woman is suffix divorced. For example, the fellow throws a ksube towards his wife, and it's unclear if it lands closer to her or closer to him. So, like Reb Zer, the Amr Reb Zer says, Reb Zer, kol makom she'amu migoreshes, veina migoreshes, that whenever we have a situation of a suffix, bai l'chayv b'mizonosel, so her husband is chayv to pay for her groceries, right? Since, right, we're not sure if she's divorced or not, so he still has to support her. Now, what if he dies? Well, at that point, right, it says b'chayel. When he's alive, he has to pay for her groceries, but once he dies, they no longer pay for her groceries, and that is coming. So when we say that when the Mishnah says kol she'ein la mizonos, who's kol she'ein la mizonos? Well, this is coming to include this woman who was a suffix divorced, and then her husband died. She doesn't get mizonos anymore. That's this other case of a situation where a woman doesn't get mizonos. But what about a grusha? A grusha we don't know anything about from our Mishnah. That's the next Mishnah that says that she would have to go to Bezdin in order if she wanted to sell anything. Okay, fine. Fine. Going weiter. Tashma, coming here. Just like she can sell outside of Bezdin, also her heirs would be able to sell outside of Bezdin. Bishlomo, the Manda Omar, so I understand, according to opinion who says that it's because we don't want that a fellow doesn't want that his wife should have to go to Bezdin. So just like it's not nice for her to have to go to Bezdin, Yoshel Nami lo nichle dilibazu. Also, her heirs, he wouldn't want them to have to go to Bezdin. Elo lemando Omar mishum chino. But if it's because of chen, Yoshel, my chen ika. What does her heirs have to do with chen, with her wanting to get married? So tirgma ula kigon sheyarashta bita o achosa. Well, what if the one to inherit her was her daughter or her sister? And in that case, yeah, we're not going to want to have to make them go to Bezdin because of chen, because we're going to want them to get married, right? Women in general, we're going to want them to get married. We don't want to have a situation where women are going to have to go to Bezdin in order to claim the ksuba. Okay? Looks like somebody just got her. Yeah, somebody just got her. Hopefully it won't get too loud. Let's go weiter. Oh, 2 people just got her. Hopefully it won't get double as loud. Okay, let's go weiter. So now, we're going to go for it. We're going to go for the Maaseh. We're going to do another Mishnah. I think I'm going to try to get all the way to the next Mishnah, which is basically a little ambitious. It's like I'm going to get like 2/3 through the next Amud. Let's see if we can do it. It'll mean that tomorrow is pretty short. I think that would be nice. Machur Ksubasa o Miktsasa. So if you have a woman who sold her Ksuba, o Miktsasa, or even part of it. Mashkina Ksubasa, if she made her Ksuba a collateral, right, a guarantee, what's the word? I'm not thinking of collateral, a deposit on a loan, o Miktsasa, or part of it. Nosna Ksubasa la'acher, she gave her Ksuba to somebody else, o Miktsasa, or part of it. Lo simkar esa sha'ar ela bebezdin. She can only sell the rest in Bezdin, and that's because right, she can only collect, right, meaning we had, let's see, Okay, we're going to see in the Gemara, does Rashi even point that out? Yeah, Rashi even points out on the Mishnah that we're going to see in the Gemara that this is the opinion of Reb Shimon. Now, if you remember from the previous Mishnah, Reb Shimon had said that if she doesn't have mizonis, well then she has to sell in Bezdin. Now, once she sells part of her ksuba, so then, right, once she receives her ksuba, she doesn't get mizonis anymore, and that even applies to part of it. So once she sells part of her ksuba, then she can't get mizonis anymore. Since she can't get mizonis, so she has to sell in Bezdin, right? So simkos ashar el bezdin. At that point, she has to sell in Bezdin. The chacham say mocheres afilu arba v'chamisha paimim. The chacham say, look, she can even sell 4 or 5 times. She doesn't have to go to Bezdin. Mocheres the mizonis shelo bebezdin. She could sell her mizonis outside of Bezdin, v'chosebes, and she writes, the mizonis macharti, that I'm selling this for mizonis, right, as we learned the other day, that it's eitzah tova. It's just good advice to do that, to write that it's for mizonis. V'grusha lo simkor ele bebezdin, and a divorcee should only, right, a divorcee can only sell property for her ksube in Bezdin. Says the Gemara, Masnisin Moni, who is the author of our Mishnah, right? That it said that once she sells part of her ksuba, so then she has to now collect through with Bezdin. So it's Reb Shimoni, the Tanya, as we learn in a Brisa, Machru ksubasa, if she sells her ksuba, Mashkina ksubasa, if she sets her ksuba as a deposit, also saw ksubasa aputiki la'acher, if she made her ksuba, set aside her ksuba as payment for a different loan. Ein la mizonis, she no longer can collect mizonis. Reb Shimon Omer afilu avapi shalomachra v'lomashkina v'loksubasa ella machtzisa of the mizonis. Says Reb Shimon, even if it was only half of her ksuba that she sold or set as a deposit, she still is unable to collect mizonos at that point. So we see that our Mishnah, which says machuk subasa omiktsas, or even part of it, so she loses, so she can't collect mizonos anymore, and therefore she has to collect in Bezdin. So that's Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon savar to laminon mixas kesef kichol kesef. So does that mean that Reb Shimon holds that if you only have partial money, so it's not considered like you have the whole thing? Meaning, once she sells away part of her ksuba, it's considered like she doesn't have any amount of the ksuba anymore, and therefore she can't collect mizonos. But, okay, so then that means, if you look at it from the other perspective, it means that having part of something basically means that you don't have any of it, right? Right? We don't say that having part of the value of something is as if you have the entire value. Whereas the Rabbanan say punkt fakert, that if you have part of it, then it's considered like you have the whole thing. But we see the opposite. The Tanya, as we learn in a Brisa, also it says by a Kohen Gadol that he needs to marry a Besula. Prat leBogeres, shekalu Besuleo divra mer, to the exclusion of a Bogeres, that a Bogeres, as we learned in Masechta Yevamos, a Bogeres, her Besulim are I don't know, weaker, not as intact. Divra mer, that is Reb Meir. Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon, Machshirin, Bogeres, whereas Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon allow a Boger. So we see that in that case, right, Reb Meir is saying that Mixas Besulim is not enough, and Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon are saying that Mixas Besulim is enough. So we see that according to Reb Shimon, partial Besulim is considered like all Besulim, and yet over here in our Mishnah, Reb Shimon is saying that partial Ksube is not considered like the whole Ksube, and she can no longer collect mizonos. So Hasan b'kroi plige. So the Gemara says that's a different story, because by Kohen Gadol and Besula, it's a question of how do you understand the Psukim. Reb Meir Sover Besula afilu mixas Besulim, that Reb Meir holds that when when the pasuk says Besula, it means even partial Besulim is enough. Besuleha ad ika kulu Besulim. But when it says Besuleha, it means that she has to have all of her Besulim. Bivsuleha bichdarka in shalo kedarka lo. Bivsuleha means that, and needing full besulim is only with bia kedarka. Bia shelo kedarka is not an issue. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Savi, besula shlema mashma, that when it says besula, it means right, all of the besulim. Besulea afilu mikzas besulim. It says besulea means even mikzas besulim, even if she's a bogeres, that's okay. Besulea, she would call besulea koyaman, but it has to be all of her besulim, ben michdarka, ben shelo kedarka, whether it's kedarka, whether it's shelo kedarka, both of them are relevant. So therefore, even if she had bia shelo kedarka, that would be a problem. So there was a woman who chapped a silver cup for her ksuba. Now the thing, it wasn't her entire ksuba; it was only part of her ksuba. Katav mezone, and now she's asking for money for her grocery bills. So now they didn't want to give her the grocery bills because Reb Shimon's opinion is that once she receives part of it, she can't receive mizonos. Once she receives part of the ksuba, she can't receive mizonos anymore. So I saw the time of the Rava, so they came before Rava. Amalu, he said to them, he said to the orphans, Zilu avila mizonos, give her, pay for her grocery bills. Leis dechosh lo Reb Shimon. Nobody holds like Reb Shimon the Omar lo aminu mikzas kesef kechol kesef, that Reb Shimon says that we do not say that having part of the money is like having all of the money, i.e. once already she receives part of her ksuba, then she loses mizonos. We don't hold like Reb Shimon, pay for her grocery bills. Shalach le Rabbi B'derava le Rav Yosef, so Rabbi B'derava sends to Rav Yosef, Mocheres shelo bebezdin tzricha shvo o ein tzricha shvo. If she sells her ksuba, Mocheres shelo bezdin, she sells property outside of bezdin, tzricha shvo ein tzricha shvo, does she need to if she sells her property outside of bezdin, does she need to swear that she didn't take any other things? So v'tibai lach achraze. But one second, what about achraze? Apparently when bezdin has to sell property to pay for to pay a creditor, so there's an announcement for 30 days prior. And the question, and so they say, v'tibai lach achraze, shouldn't you ask about if you have to do this announcement or not? Amar achraze lo kami bayali. So Rav Yosef says where am I? So what just happened? Shalach leRabbi the Rav Yosef mocheres shelo bebezdin tzricha shvo ein tzricha shvo v'tibar lachasru achraza amale. So Rabbi the Rav says achraza lo kami bayli. I'm not asking about the announcement. The Amar Reb Zer Amar of Nachman, because Reb Zer says name of Nachman almone sheshame leatzma lo asasav lo klum. That says Reb Zer in the name of Reb Nachman that in almone, who evaluates the value of a field for herself, but she does it on her own, she did nothing. Seichi dami, what's the situation where she evaluated on her own? Actually, no, one second. Sheshama la'atzma, I think that, I'm sorry. So, it means that she chapped the land for herself. Right? Amana sheshama la'atzma, lo asasav lo klum. That if she, what's the word talking about when you chap something around? I guess that's it, chapping around. So if you have a widow who just chaps around some land for herself, lo asasav lo klum, it's irrelevant. So now yichidami. What's the situation where when she chaps around land for herself, then it's irrelevant. So either achrus, if it's talking about a situation where there was an announcement for 30 days prior, amay lo asasav lo klum, why is it irrelevant? Why, right? Why not just say that whatever the highest bid was during that process, she can go based on that bid, and if it's the price of her ksuba, she can take it. So elalav kilo achrus, it must be talking about where they did not make an announcement about it, and there was no announcement, and if she takes it for herself, so then it's irrelevant. But if she then sells it to somebody else, whatever she did, i.e. it would be fine. So we see that it's talking about where there is no announcement. So the olam da'achor, to which we say no, really there was an announcement with the amrila, and they say to her, man sham lich. They say to her, who basically gave you permission to evaluate this thing and take it, right? Right now the estate belongs to the orphans, who kind of gave you the power to be able to evaluate things and take them. Ki haidahu gavra da'afkidu gabe Kisisa diyasme. It's like there was a fellow who he was taking care of fodder, like animal food for orphans, right? So he was in charge of like protecting it. But the thing is that he had lent to the father who passed away 400 zuz. So azul shamal lenafshi ba'b'mei zuzeh. So he figured that, well, this animal feed is worth 400 zuz. I'm owed 400 zuz. I'm just going to chap this arayin. So Iker, and then the value of the animal food increased. Kom b'shismeya, and now it's valued at 600. So now it's 50% more than the 400 zuz that he's owed. Also the Rav Ami, so he came for Rav Ami, Amrle, and Rav Ami says to him, Man shamlach, who gave you the authority to evaluate this animal food and keep it for yourself? This is the orphans. You can't just do that. The halacha is that she is required to swear that she didn't take anything else, and she does not need to make an announcement. So, okay. So if she sells the property outside of Bezdin, she does. She needs to swear that she didn't take anything else, but she does not need to. That there is no announcement prior for 30 days prior that this field is being sold. Well, friends, that was Daf Tzadi Zayin of Masechta Ksubis. So we saw my brother's bringing down his transportation device, so there might be some noise. So we learned about when you have a almana who's selling property to pay for grocery bills, right? Does she sell it once a year or every 6 months? And then in either case, the fellow who buys it would pay her in 1 month installments. We saw the sugya about what happens if you sell epis in order to get cash to pay for a different investment, but that investment falls through. And we said lemaskana that you can that it reverses. We saw an interesting mishnah about an almana selling her property for selling property in order to pay for mizonis, in order to pay for ksubis. So Tanakama had said that whether she's paying for, right, whether it's an almana, whether it's who doesn't have mizonis, or whether it's nisuin, almana mina nisuin, whether it's an almana mina erisin or an almana mina nisuin, she could sell outside of Bezdin. Whereas Reb Shimon says no, dafka a mina nisuin she could sell outside of Bezdin because there is mizonis, but mina erisin where there's no mizonis, so that would dafka have to be in Bezdin. We saw different reasons for how come. Oh wow, there's a whole oilam over here, and they're making a lot of noise. What? What can you do?
Can you borrow your kum?
I don't care.
Okay.
Anyways, so what were we talking about? So the question was, how come according to the Tanakama the almana needs to collect? Can sell outside of Bezdin? We gave two answers. One is either mishum china, the other, right? That was Ula's opinion. Rabbi Yochanan said because a fellow doesn't want shetis baze ishta bebezdin. Okay, fine. Then we got to another mishnah where we said that if she already sells like part of her ksubis, so then she doesn't get mizonis anymore, and she has to collect the rest of the ksuba in Bezdin. We said that was Dafka Reb Shimon's opinion. And then we said at the end that an almana who sells property would need to swear that she didn't take any other stuff, and she doesn't need to make any kinds of announcements about it in advance. Friends, that was Daf Tzadi Zayin of Masechta Ksubis. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.